Today I found myself in Fort Smith, Arkansas, and I made my way to Miss Laura's Social Club and Visitor Center. It is exactly what it sounds like, a brothel that was opened in 1904. It was quite literally on the wrong side of the tracks. There, my guide was a young girl named Juliana. At 22 years old, she was local, wise beyond her years, and so very passionate about this place that she conducted her own research so diligently that every day she would handwrite out a list of what she thought were pertinent facts, and occasionally she would give those lists to visitors to take with them as a keepsake. I'm going to hold on to mine for a very long time. As a result of the trips that I took in 2020 and 2022, my focus has been on trying to understand the very different experience the people in rural areas have had as compared to my own during the pandemic. I cannot think of anyone who can speak to it quite as well as Juliana. Like Eloise, her story is poignant, and yet she is absolutely absent of any grievance. Please listen. So Juliana, the story that you just shared with me, and thank you, by the way, for doing that. You had a heart defect that you've had that was fairly minor, and you had some byproduct of that. But after getting COVID and having living in a situation where you were frankly quite scared because you were trying to keep your mom safe, but at the same time you also had to keep yourself safe.
Yes.
And my suspicion is because you were also at a small school, and not everybody would adhere to the masks requirements and that sort of thing. So there was a fair amount of transmission going on that was outside of your control, right? So you developed something called POTS. Could you say the whole name for me?
Posterior orthostatic tachycardia syndrome.
And it's 4 years later, and you're still living with the byproduct of that.
So there's no cure for POTS. They only have treatments and, like I said, beta blockers and things like that to slow your heart rate. And that's really it, but those cause side effects of their own.
So this is going to sound like an odd question.
Oh, no, you're fine.
But you come from a very small community.
Oh, yes.
And graduated with 36 other students. And you... we've talked a little bit about the strain that COVID could put on the community, but for you, with having these long-term effects that you're going to have to manage probably for the rest of your life, I'm really curious how that has left you feeling about your neighbors and the people around you.
You mean how it may affect them, or how I'm feeling that it may affect them?
I'm wondering how you feel about your relationship with them. Did you feel let down? Did you feel...
So those around me I felt very let down by. In my small town community, there are a lot of elderly people. And a lot of the people who weren't wearing masks were young and healthy and didn't have to worry if they got COVID. Maybe they were sick for 2 weeks, but they'd get through it, whereas like my mother would have died. There's no chance. She can hardly breathe without oxygen as is, let alone having COVID. So it was very disappointing to see that no one took it as serious as they should have. But also, from the point of view of the high schoolers, they were still kids. They didn't understand the severity of it. A lot of the ones that did pushed it to the side because if they accepted that it was scary, then they had to actually be afraid instead of just making a joke out of it. And I feel like that's how a lot of teenagers deal with scary things, is they push it aside and make it a joke, so they don't have to actually face it. So it was very disappointing to see my community not really abide by any sort of protocols. I mean, if you didn't work in healthcare, you more than likely didn't get the vaccine in my community. So, and that's not to say that I think that everybody should have it, but that's to say if you are willing and able, and if you have someone in your family that needs to be protected, why would you not?
So you had to wait to get the vaccine?
I did, yes. So I ended up getting the vaccine in 2022 when I was employed at a hospital here.
Sometimes I'm speechless. Juliana, you mentioned your hope was mostly economic for the area, and
Yes.
So it kind of leads me to the last question for me.
Okay.
In terms of your future here
Mm-hmm.
in Fort Smith or the surrounding area, what do you hope for yourself personally, and do you plan on staying?
So I do plan on staying in the area. Me and my boyfriend will move back over the state line soon because he is Native, so we can get some benefits from them as far as help with down payments on homes or credit loans and stuff like that. In the future, I would like to see growth for myself and my relationship. We've known each other since kindergarten, and it's just, we're best friends, and I love that. And we've been together 3 years in October, so I'm not supposed to know this, but he asked my father for permission. So hopefully that's coming, and soon a family after that and stuff like that. So just personal growth is what I would like to see. I'm not one to really care about money or materialistic things. I think happiness is more important than any of that, and materialistic objects aren't going to give you happiness. So that's just the way I feel.
There have been so many surprises coming here to Miss Laura's visitor center, but that is probably one of the nicest, hopeful things I've heard in a few.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.